0-2 on Hinske, and that's strike 3 called. One lousy hit. This is fly to center field. It settles into the glove of Vernon Wells, and Roy Halladay has one-hit the Yankees. You've just witnessed one of the finest performances of his career. 0-2 pitch, strike 3 called. Say goodnight, Mr. Teixeira. Roy Halladay is just mowing him down now,
I believe, and try to put him away.
There's the breaking ball, and that's a base hit down the line. Rios is in to score. Here comes Wells. Off to second goes Rolen, and it's 2-0 for the Blue Jays.
A good piece of hitting by Scott Rolen. Fouled off the fastball and got the breaking ball. Able to place it down the line, hit it hard enough to get it past A-Rod. Couple runs in.
It is Sportsfeld Storytime. We are digging back in, as we always do on this show. We are digging back into the classics, looking back at, I would say, an underrated gem, because the Blue Jays became a much better team than this shortly thereafter. One of my favorite moments from an era of Blue Jays baseball that I think I am probably more nostalgic of than most people. It is the 2009 Toronto Blue Jays. I recognize now, we talked in the last episode, that the era of Blue Jays here, the Black Jays, the Burnett era, was a little bit better than everybody remembers, where they were consistently an above 500 team. They were 87-win team in his first year. 2009 is not one of those seasons, decidedly. They're bad in 2009, straight up.
Yeah, but didn't they start really well?
Yeah, I believe they got out. They were 13-5 at one point, or if you'd like, 15-8, or if you'd like, 18-9, or 20-10. So they were 10 games above 500 in May.
In May, they were in first place in the AL East until May 23rd, 2009, and then they lost it. Which, like, I feel like the last couple of years we've talked, especially last year with the shortened season, it was kind of like, well, the first 60 games of a baseball season don't matter. This is one of those teams where, boy, is that ever true.
Absolutely the case. An interesting amalgamation of this team. You know, obviously the most important factor is 21-year-old Travis Snider is on this team, and everybody's favorite player. He was just like, it's. I know that obviously it is parody at this point that I am the leader of the bandwagon, but at the time he was the guy. It wasn't like the thing about Travis Snider that I think maybe people who weren't there don't remember. It's like it's not like I was hitching my wagon to Richard Urania. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
This dude was a cannot miss prospect. He was the number one hitter. He was supposed to be 45 and 120 every year.
He was such a can't miss. And like this, I will admit, this is a little bit of hyperbole, or maybe a lot of hyperbole, and maybe relegated mostly to sort of these early days of the Blue Jays blogosphere, as it were. But I would say that Travis Snider is, if not directly, at least the start of literally Cito Gaston becoming like not beloved in Toronto.
See, sullied for me. I take it harder than most, but boy, oh boy, was I ever mad at the stories that day one, game one, Cito Gaston was like, you can't spin like that in the major leagues. Oh,
and like,
still not over it.
And the thing is, like, I think it's an understandable thing to be upset about, because it's a ridiculous thing to say, first of all, and the sort of up and down. Like, we all know the Travis Snider story. I have to recap it here, but like, it was literally Cito Gaston Like, it would be like in 10 years, Nick Nurse being run out of town for not playing a young guy. Right. Like, he won both the World Series titles with the Blue Jays, is on the level of excellence. And it's like, because of the Travis Snider thing, or at least the Travis Snider thing was the start, it was like, well, fuck this guy.
It was extremely weird that Cito was managing this team in the first place. Cito got brought in midway through the 2008 season. John Gibbons was dismissed after a 35-39 start. Cito came in, went 51-37 the rest of the way. You can say, oh my goodness, Cito really turned it around. Or you could say they were probably a better team than they were performing, and Cito happened to be the guy who managed that. It depends. Your mileage may vary on that. But crazy to me that Cito Gaston is a manager in 2009. J.P. Ricciardi would get fired at the end of this season. December 3rd, 2009, J.P. Ricciardi gets fired. This is the team that breaks J.P. Ricciardi's tenure, and then we move into the Alex Anthopoulos era. Shortly after that, we'll do a little bit of remembering of some guys. Of course, Vernon Wells, the stalwart, is your center fielder. And Vernon's worst year, I would say, probably as a starter. He was not great. 158 games, 86 OPS plus. He was very, very, very quite not very good. Basically, his worst years in Toronto was 2009.
So I will once again say, I don't know if this is due to sort of, as we talked about last week, this being like a key entry point into reading DJF era stuff. But I really feel like outside of maybe 2017, and maybe even 2018, this is one of the more negative from fans Blue Jays seasons I can think of. Yes,
because even as we look back at them now and are like, oh man, the Black Jays were not that bad. This team is sort of what everybody remembers as the Black Jays,
which is funny because
87 and old bad guys.
And the funny thing is, the years on either side of it are actually pretty positive. They're 86 and 85 wins on either side of this year.
Crazy,
but I think you're right. This year was so, I don't want to say fully poisonous, but like, this is the year Travis Snider got fucked up. This is the year Ricciardi got fired. This is the last year, of Roy Halladay with the Blue Jays. So I understand sort of why this year is so reviled.
There you go.
When it comes to the Blue Jays, and why it colored kind of like half a decade of teams.
I think that's absolutely bang on. Some guys to remember, as I mentioned, Rod Barajas behind the plate, and then just the absolute core of that era is Overbay, Hill, Wells, Rios, Lind, John McDonald, of course, and Marco Scudero, who everybody loved. Everybody loved Marco Scudero.
We did love Marco Scudero. Also, I won't be afraid to say it, really didn't like Jose Bautista this season.
I was gonna try to bury it a little bit, but this is, if you look at the roster and you start to scroll down a little bit, at the very bottoms there is like Jose Bautista played 113 games, hit 13 home runs, and had a 349 OBP.
Bautista's going after that first one. He lofts it to left center field. Back to the wall is up and it's gone. A home run, Jose Bautista.
Edwin Encarnacion listed as a third baseman, played 42 games. E5, my goodness gracious. Randy Ruiz, remember Randy Ruiz? The Randy Ruiz.
That's right.
And Scott Rolen, who got a little bit of buzz. That's talking about internet hype. Scott Rolen was like, that's the greatest Blue Jay of all time. He gets traded midway through the year for Encarnacion, but just sort of a funny little roster of like, you can see in that midway, it's to your point of like Halladay being moved and the introduction of Bautista and Encarnacion to this roster is like, this is the year that it transitions from those Jays to the 2010 team. I mean, obviously, but like the core like visibly changes midway through this year.
I think Scott Rolen is one of the first guys I can remember where like one of the first guys where the internet really changed how I thought about him. Like I never disliked Scott Rolen. Scott Rolen was always good to great for the Blue Jays. But like he only played like a season and a half here, 2 seasons here. And then like the G-Boat thing took off, which again, tongue in cheek, but also like he was awesome that year that he got traded. And so, but there's still very much like, I remember sort of coming back to like reading with the Jays regularly with all that and being like, oh yeah, Scott Rolen's like the best fucking guy ever. And it's just funny. It's funny how this is the era of like narratives being created in that way.
It's funny you mentioned that. Is like it felt like Rolen was there for longer than he was. I feel the same way. I look at the pitching staff and the relievers and stuff. I was like, man, I feel like all these guys were there for 10 years. Like it's Talent and Cecil and Zepchinski and Frazier and Camp, League, Carlson, Downs, Percy, Jansen, Accardo, Dirk Hayhurst. It's like, man, I felt like every one of those guys played. Jesse Litch down there, like played every single year of my 20s, but like they didn't obviously. But it's just like, man, other than
Cecil
this 2019 really did implant itself as like this is what this team was for this entire time.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And one day, not today, but one day we're gonna have to talk about Scott Rolen as just like an underratedly great all-time Blue Jay, just like so consistent always. I
almost feel like it's
coming around.
I was gonna argue I almost feel like it's swung too far in that way, in that like to your point, like it was basically a one season. Like he played 115 games the one year and 88 the other. Like, you know, he was good. Good.
Sorry, what name did I say?
Scott Rolen.
Sorry, I fully meant to move on from Scott Rolen. I meant to talk about Lyle Overbay.
It's 2-1 on Overbay. Swung on and drilled up the middle, a base hit to center field. Kevin Millar rounding, and he comes in to score. The Blue Jays have taken a 1-0 lead.
Oh, Loverboy. Lyle Overbay is a guy that, to your point about era, if Lyle Overbay played now, he would be such a darling. Just like always on base, good defense.
That's what I mean. Like his years in Toronto, his OPS plus was 125, 85, 109, 119, 105.
Yeah.
Just like solid.
People were like, he doesn't hit home runs, right? They wanted the first baseman to hit home runs.
That's right.
But like to that point, his 5 years in Toronto, he played more games with Toronto than he did for anybody else. His OBP his time in Toronto was 350. Like he's exactly what you want your 5-hole guy to be every single day. It's just that there wasn't power in other spots, and you know Wells was bad. What can you really say?
In 2009, the year we're talking about, his OBP was 372, and he only struck out 95 times. Like exactly to your point, exactly what you want.
Incredible. As you said, this team got off to a hot start. They were, 30-game samples of a baseball team, as we've proven many times. You know, you got up to 27 and 14. Meaningless, just completely meaningless. If last year's Blue Jays team had been 27 and 14 at one point, think about how unquestionably high they would have finished in the standings.
They would have won the East. Probably. I don't remember, but like maybe.
The game that we're leading to, the showdown with Burnett is like pretty much the pinnacle of the season. Like they finished that game 23-12. And they finished the season 8 games under 500. They go on huge losing streaks basically immediately after. They lose 9 in a row at one point, like a month later.
Also very funny to me, sort of, I guess, in the pre-2015 times of looking at Blue Jays attendance and how, like, obviously when the team is bad, the numbers drop because that's just how it works in Toronto, and that's fine. But, like, post-2015, if a Blue Jays team, and, like, obviously pre-COVID times, but if a Blue Jays team was 15-9 and tied for first in the AL East at the end of April, that weekend series in Toronto would draw more people than the Blue Jays did. Like that weekend series against Baltimore, first weekend of May, first place in the AL East. The Saturday game drew 18,000 people. That baby would be pretty close to full these days.
Yeah, April might be a little, but yeah, I think you're right. I think April might be a little cutting it close.
And the Burnett spike in attendance is hilarious.
I think I went to this weekend set against the Athletics. I'll tell you that much. Boy, oh boy. So yeah, 43,737 at the Burnett game, and then
20,000
the next day. 22 on the Thursday set. The Yankees always, you remember this? The Yankees would always bring.
That's right. That's true.
5,000 to 8,000 fans, no matter
what. I think that's still true to an extent. Maybe it's less so now because demand in Toronto's a little higher, but there's still always a big Yankee contingent.
You know, the next week, Sunday, 37,000. So.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true.
Say what you will. Another Halladay start, of course, but who knows? That could have been a giveaway, knowing the way this shit works.
That's also very true.
I'm going to be interested to see how attendance changes when fans are back in the building, because
me too.
They were a really bad team the last time they played at home.
But I mean, if they're good this year in Florida, I could see it being pretty high.
Yeah, why not? Why would
I hope. As long as it's safe, I hope.
Oh boy. Anyway, as we said, the Blue Jays off to a very hot start to start 2009. The Yankees, not so much. They were 15-17. Derek Sanderson Jeter was on the disabled list, as it was called at the time. Now it is the injured list. No Jeter, and I think no Robinson Cano was healthy, but your Yankees was classic Yankees that era, like Gardner, Damon, Teixeira, Rodriguez, Matsui, Swisher, Cano, Cabrera, Kevin Cash. This is Kevin Cash's debut behind the plate as a member of the New York Yankees. Anyway, we will deal with that. We're going to get into the game. We're going to get to first pitch. We're going to get to everything that it was like to be in a quote-unquote playoff atmosphere at the Rogers Center in May of 2009. It's Halladay versus Burnett on the next episode of Sportsfeld Storytime.